Welcome to Smart Gamer Live. We're here for the community town hall. I have Velik, Zeb, Poison Taco, and Puka with me. Only one of us has a real beard.
Oh, you had to go there.
And I wonder who that is. Could be Poison Taco. No. Puka,
Yeah,
how
I got
long?
rid of mine.
It's Steve. It's Steve.
How long is your beard, Puka?
I don't have a complex. Mine's short by option.
Okay.
I mean, I don't have a banana nearby to help you guys measure, but it's about a foot. It's about a foot.
I've heard that about you white guys.
What? Oh boy. And that's
Oh
an
my!
awkward silence.
The awkward silence. All right. I'm just going to jump into it since, all this beard talk can kind of create some drama. That's great for our topic today is we're going to talk about guild drama. So, guild drama, good, bad, ugly. Who's got an opinion? I mean, I know I do.
Always ugly.
I love guild drama. I think it's fantastic. I think it's good for people to encounter drama as it forces them to work together.
I'm with you, Zaylin. I eat it up. I love it.
Sometimes it's the tricky part is when you're getting into you as a leader jump into the guild drama too soon, I guess you could say, and you shut people down, and that prevents them from being able to work out those differences. But then
I think it's go ahead.
Nope, it's all you.
I think it's a question of what type of guild drama you're referring to. Like if it's like a couple people, like the other day, I was arguing back and forth with some people on Discord about whether or not Rey is a Mary Sue character in Star Wars. If people are getting a little dramatic about that and they want to go on for like an hour before it starts getting kind of out of hand, that's one thing. Whereas if people are like being outright disrespectful and causing some issues, I don't tolerate that crap at all.
But at what point in the conversation do you realize that, okay, this person is just being straight up disrespectful, or are they legitimately trying to deal with an issue and maybe it's a personality clash, something else?
Well, it's easy to tell when somebody's going for the jugular on somebody else, or they're just trying to address the actual topic. And if that's the case, then you address the topic and not the subject. But if the subject comes into play, like me and Taco have a disagreement, and Puka jumps in on me, then it's Puka's fault because Puka is creating the drama. He's upping the drama ante, as it were.
I think people can get overly dramatic without making it personal. They can go and harp on to something to a point where it's obviously starting to cause some undue friction between people. But generally, that's where I draw. Generally, that would be where I draw the line, is at the personal aspect of it. If someone is attacking someone personally, and that's not what the issue of the drama is, because someone like rage quits or something, that's a personal issue that you need to deal with. But if it's not, if the problem isn't something like that, and they're starting to make it personal, then that I think is the obvious line where someone needs to intercede and cut it off before. It just because it's just going to spread to other people at that point, and it's going to get out of hand.
See, I would counter that a little bit and say that if people, even if they're getting personal, everybody's got a different personality, and most of the time people just do not know how to work together with those personalities. I'd stay back a little bit. And yes, you do run the issue of potentially losing more than one person from your guild or community. That's a really hard balance to deal with.
Well, I think it depends on at least how the conversation is going. And you can track things like tone. You can track things like productivity in an argument. There is absolutely nothing wrong with people arguing. Like you're meant to argue, so long as you're doing it in a productive manner. So long as people are at least understanding their opponent's points, and I think that's very important, especially so when you hear someone ranting on whatever it might be, and then their opponent comes back with their excuse, and then they hit their counter argument, and their counter argument, you as an observer, is like, oh, they did not understand what the first person was trying to say, and they're arguing a completely different point. In my opinion, that's where, like, you don't step in to shut down the argument. Like, that's no fun for anybody, right? Like, people want to be free to argue their points, but you do be like, hey, time out, bring it here real quick. You're arguing this. You're arguing this. This is kind of where you guys are at. These are the point this person's trying to make. This is the point this person's trying to make. Y'all are kind of back there. Go pick it back up. And I think that's a healthy way of allowing that argument to happen. But you got to make sure that everyone's points are being expressed clearly, and they're also being understood by their opponent in an argument.
Yeah, I would say as a guild leader, I don't consider it my job to interfere with how an argument is taking place, period. Like, I wouldn't step in and go, all right, let's clarify your points. I wouldn't get involved in that. My sole concern is whether or not, and this is a kind of a big aspect of my community, is whether or not people are being respectful of each other. You know, if it's getting to the point where I feel like they're starting to disrespect and insult each other, then, you know, I'd be like, you know, intercede and be like, you need to stop this right now. If you want to continue this and you both mutually want to continue this, take it out of a public space. Because I think location matters too. If you want to DM each other back and forth and you're both perfectly fine DMing each other and calling each other names or arguing about something for 3 hours, that's fine. But if you've been monopolizing one of the Discord channels for 3 to 4 hours arguing about a topic and there's no resolution, if you're insulting each other, you need to get it out of the public space, period. And if you're not, and you're just monopolizing the stuff for like way too long, that's probably the point where I would interfere and go, okay, y'all have dragged this entire channel derailed onto your argument about raid tactics when this is not the channel for that, you know, for the last 3 hours. So maybe you need to either just agree to disagree or take it somewhere else.
Well, it sounds to me too that maybe the hypothetical argument that you're talking about is something that's taking place after or it's basically a point of reflection after a time of failure.
Could be
in your guilds, and you have members kind of pointing fingers. And yeah, that's a point where I think it's important to allow not necessarily that finger pointing to happen. Well, no, let me roll that back. It's important to allow that finger pointing to happen, but it's got to come from a point of construction, right? It's got to come from a goal and a mindset of, I'm pointing my finger at you because this is what I think happened and blah, blah, blah. And this is how I think it needs to change. And that needs to be open if you're, you know, because at that point in this time and setting, you're kind of in a moment of reflection anyway. And I think everyone present is. But yeah, you can't attack somebody's person, nor do I think you can allow that. And if you have someone that gets to that point, that's when, you know, that again, leadership officers got to step aside and be like, listen, this isn't constructive for anybody. Nobody's getting anything out of this. You're just tearing down the conversation. We're looking to improve, and you're letting your emotions get in the way of a situation.
Okay, but
I would roll back what I said slightly and just say that I do think if an argument is related to game performance, like a raid performance or something, then obviously the officer should be involved in that.
Okay, but what if the officer is in question? So a great example, which I'm kind of geeky on these things, I do a lot of reading and whatnot. One guy wrote something that talked about an issue he was having where he had a non-officer leading a raid. And this officer was just very, hey, numbers don't lie. This is what you're good at. This is what you're not good at. These are the classes I need for this, yada, yada, yada. Then you have an officer come along who is not necessarily the numbers type person. He's more of the, hey, I've put in the work. I've helped all these people. I deserve a spot on this raid. But he sees, we'll say Velik is the raid leader. He sees Velik attacking him going, you're not good enough. How do you deal with that? It is a personality clash, and person B may see it as being personal, but person A is not trying to be personal. They're just being flat out, hey, these are the numbers. They don't lie. I don't really give a rip about how you feel. It's got nothing to do with that. It's just you can't pull your weight.
I'll take that one. Um, I want to start by saying, first off, if my non-officer, whoever that is, if they're the person in charge of that raid, that event, whatever, that's their show, right? Like there is no you, whether I'm the guild leader, whether I'm an officer, that does not earn me a spot anywhere. When that person, if they have set up and they've clearly, say their events on a calendar and they're like, hey, I've got expectations. This is what we need to bring. And if I, even being a leader or an officer, can't meet those expectations, you better believe I don't want you bending over backwards for me. And nor would I accept any officer to be like, hey, I'm an officer. Why is there not a place for me? But like, no, this person's got set expectations. They laid that out. And that's what everyone should have, those expectations going to that. Now, it might be a little bit different conversation if those expectations weren't set beforehand, like on a calendar and an event description. But so long as that's set beforehand, it's that person's event to run and do it as they please.
Okay, but how do you deal with the personality clash there? We've established the baseline that this is how you view things. But the fact of the matter is you still have two people, one of which is communicating in a certain way, and the second person is not receiving that communication in the way that it's meant.
Again, it comes down to, for me, it comes down to the person who is showing up as an attendee. That would be my officer in this place, has got to be willing to bend to the requirements of the person hosting the event. And if you're not happy with that, if you're not happy the way that's running, then you can find a free time slot and host your own event to do that. But at the end of the day, you might not like the personality of the person doing the leading here, but they are at least making a sacrifice of time to organize and lead. And you don't have to jive with them. And if you can't be in the same room with them, then don't be in the same room. You can't force personalities that are against each other to play together. You can't. But
nor should you.
If the two people can compromise and set aside their differences and play a game together, then that's fine.
I think I do have something to add to that, because we're in a similar sort of situation organizationally. I do think the organization and preparation to it is important because we have a similar sort of thing where there's a difference between an official event and an unofficial event. If people are running their own unofficial events, as long as they're being respectful and they're not breaking our other rules for our community and stuff, I don't really care what they do or how they want to run it. But if it's an official event, like say, either an officer is running something or one of our officers gets someone who's not an officer to run an event and it's scheduled, it's on our calendar, it is kind of an official thing. If they're going to have requirements like that keep people out, those have to be publicly stated ahead of time. Those have to be explicitly detailed that said, these are the people who get into this event. So if it's going by those numbers, those would be stated saying you have to be able to hit this amount of DPS, so on and so forth, to fill this role, etc. But then when people do clash like that, because someone could still come in and go, well, I don't meet that, but I can still do this better. They may be trying to finagle their way around that. I think ultimately what that comes down to is that is where one, people need to be better at talking to each other, and I do think that some of these conflicts can be opportunities for growth for people, for them to hash out some things and grow as people and learn to talk with each other better. But ultimately, I think it starts with making sure that everyone is at least trying to be respectful, and that's why that's why I try to push that so much. Is people, whatever you're going to argue about, at least try to be respectful to each other while you're doing it. Because then as soon as you devolve into like name calling and stuff, it's lost. Nothing's being learned here anymore. But also that's where you need an arbitrator to a certain degree. And that's where the officers are supposed to come in, at least in theory. But that's why we have a general chain of command policy, which I also refer to as crap rolls uphill. If someone has a problem with how something is organized in a department, so say that we're doing a PvP event, and they have a problem with how a PvP group is being organized, they're supposed to take that to the PvP officer. If their problem is with the PvP officer, they're supposed to take it to the person who's over the PvP department or the guild leader, so on and so forth, to get that outside arbitrator in to try and hash things out, figure out where the actual problem is, and hopefully fix an issue if there's one with the department or with how something's running.
Go ahead, Puka.
See what else got well, essentially a point, and going back to our hypothetical here, what I think is very important, and you hit on a great point here. It's like you do have to lay down your, you got to lay down your guidelines ahead of time. You got to lay down your rubric ahead of time. You, what I would never want to happen is I would never want, especially in, and let's use like let's say we got 15 people, right? And you have that bar set, but like we need everybody at this level. And I would never want somebody to come in, or I would especially never want an officer to come in below that bar and expect to be carried by 14 other people. In a raid instance, in a high level group, whatever, expect to be carried because of their status, or it's, and especially if they are the person. Now listen, if you only got 13, 14 people coming in, and there aren't other people in line above that bar waiting, that's like whatever, y'all go and do your best, right? But when you got maybe 20 people show up, and everybody's above that bar, and y'all are trying to accomplish a very difficult goal, then yeah, there are times when, again, expectations have to be set, but you have got to bring your best and your best to accomplish a goal. And you definitely, you can't have someone in a group or in a competitive game and you're shouldering them. Everyone's kind of got to build each other up. And I would never want an officer to put themselves in that situation in the first place, And there are people that game very different ways, and I don't think this is an instance that would ever, even for our guild, that we would ever find ourselves in. So I'm speaking purely hypothetical here, but it's just
you're gonna have this problem tomorrow. Now you know that, right?
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where it's like the event leader, whoever's running the show, it's their show, and you gotta put your pride, your arrogance, whatever. You gotta bucket that stuff up and listen to whoever's in charge, because it's their show. And if you don't like it, then throw something else on the calendar and do your own thing. Organize something else. Because
I do think
ultimately, I want to say ultimately, the heart of your group are the leaders that are organizing and bringing people together. And I would never in my life attack them because of how they are acting, especially when they have laid out their rubric beforehand. And I think that's the most important thing, is laying out their expectations beforehand. Mm-hmm. And if something slipped through the crack, then we got to talk about it, and that's pretty easy to change in a paragraph on an event listing. That's pretty.
I do think there's also opportunities where, like I said, I do think that some of these areas of arguments are opportunities for personal growth for people and learning how to better talk to people, because a lot of us play games online, sometimes in part because we're not very good at talking to people. So some of these conflicts can definitely happen between gamers, especially those who aren't quite as socially adept as some others are. So there could be misunderstandings. There can be miscommunications, and I think these could be opportunities for an outside party who's neutral and not passionately involved in what's going on to coach both sides and maybe see what they're saying and try to find ways to communicate them, gel them together, but also to perhaps help change the conversation itself from, okay, he has these requirements for this raid. They are publicly posted. You don't meet them. However, can we perhaps talk about what you can do to meet these? Or is there gear that you're lacking that we can help you get, that they can help you get outside of this event? Is there something that you perhaps need to work on to get up to that level that you would be able to participate with them?
I think you've hit on a great thing there that I personally am fascinated by, is the whole, we're really bad at communication. So some of us play games. How has technology impacted that? If you look, most of us are old school gamers, and we've been playing games for eons and eons. Technology has changed. We've gone from a world of interaction with each other through typing to now voice chat and video chat in games. How has that impacted? Are these disagreements worse? Are they better? Are they more numerous? Are they not? What are you guys finding in your communities?
it's got to be the average player has to be a lot more social than they used to be. Even in group situations that they were used to hide or stay silent in, it's just a requirement that even in small groups, in big groups, doesn't matter. You need to be more social, and I think the technology is doing a decent job. But it's up to people that are making these social constructs, like guild leaders, like guild officers, to actually encourage and foster these type of relationships.
Um, I will say I am so thankful that VoIP software is as readily available as it is. The amount that is lost in translation in text is just it's just terrible. So much is lost, and thankfully the amount that's lost between voice and adding um, a face to it is not as comparable.
But aren't you
Um,
adding a whole nother level of complexity there? If I say something and I just have this
you are, but that
awesome
complexity.
resting bitch face, you might
Well,
think I'm pissed off.
the point is that complexity I'm adding by adding voice is at least a level of truth. Okay, so no matter what, the point is the meaning that is being inflected via my voice is more true than the meaning that's being inflected via my text. It's more closer to the truth, and the closer we get to the true meaning of what we're trying to express, the closer we come to understanding.
I would agree that you add more context and mannerisms with voice than you do with just text alone. Text is extremely easy to misconstrue. I think voice alone still has problems for sure, though.
It's also very easy to hide your emotions in text as well. And so what that does is that leaves problems unsolved, because I can say something in text that I cannot articulate in voice when I'm, emotionally compromised. And someone's egging me for a response. There are things you can hide in text that you just cannot hide in voice. And then if the person on the other side, whatever their means may be, if their goal is to help resolve an issue, they can infer so much more out of voice and resolving a problem through voice.
I think Plague State here in the chat brings up a good thing. It's amazing in PvP. The more amped we get, the madder we sound. But we aren't actually mad. Now, Plague State, I would argue that, yes, sometimes we are actually mad. I've broken many a glasses doing PvP, hence the plastic cupware that I have. But
I was going to add, actually, I do think that the voice chat has added at least one complication that the text chat didn't have, whereas I think it fixes a lot of issues with text chat. But one area that is perhaps a problem is raging, with some people who get very angry playing games, which we all do at certain games, I think, but and don't properly use push to talk and start screaming into the microphone and things, and not necessarily cussing out their teammates, maybe, but not necessarily cussing out the teammates,
Maybe.
but just throwing a fit in general. That I think is potentially a problem that
actually
has to be addressed too.
Sorry, go ahead, Taco.
I find text chat to be incredibly useful still, especially when you're running extremely large groups. Say you're doing a big PvP event in something like Guild Wars 2 or PlanetSide 2. When you have a lot of people in voice chat, there can be all kinds of people talking. And if you're the commander running that large group, sometimes it's just easier to go into the global chat and just go in all caps going, I need to go here. Because then you also have people listening and relaying that information as well. And everybody catches it. Where if you're in a large situation where everybody's trying to talk over each other and you need to relay orders or directions, sometimes text chat is the best way to get that across. And kind of going back on text versus voice, going to my day job where I work in electrical sales. If you ever need to give bad news to people, you don't send an email. You pick up the phone and you call them. If I have to call Mr. Mill Manager and tell him why his breaker or whatever is late, I'm not going to type an email. I'm going to pick up the phone and tell them.
I was about to ask the same thing that Plague is posted about now. Does anyone else use mandatory clear comms for guild events? Because we go comm silent.
Only officers and above speaking. Yeah,
but only for official events. We don't do that for everything.
Yeah, but when you're in a big PvP ball, like say like a large Zerg situation, where there's people even outside your own comms that are kind of dogpiling in and joining in the fray, using text chat works wonders to direct everybody.
I think as a leader, we have to be multifaceted in the different types of technology that we use in order to guide these specific situations that we're in. Yes, sometimes voice is very helpful. Sometimes all caps on a raid announcement is a better choice because people won't shut the hell up in a voice chat. Being able to use all these different things is something that it's a skill bag that we've got to be able to recognize and just kind of pull out of a hat.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, one of I think maybe the last Unchained vodcast we did, that we were talking about phone apps that they could maybe use for the game. And one of the things I said was, I would love to have a phone app that syncs with your character in the game and your raid, and you could just type in there like officer commands to basically just pop up, so everyone doesn't have to have it, on a separate screen or something. They could have their phone out and just goes like standing order, so that you have.
So you want people to text and raid now?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me throw something else.
You know how slow Camel on Unchained attacks are. I'm fine with them.
Let me throw something else into this.
Bring us back.
If we're in
so when you send a message saying "Don't stand in the fire," someone's going to take out their phone while you're standing in the fire. Oh, don't stand in the fire. Okay, great.
I'm talking about Camel on Unchained context, there is no fire. So
if we're in a raid group or some kind of guild or community function, and you've got people who are just they're at each other's throats for one reason or another, what's the best way to deal with that? Do you kick them out and sacrifice the... Wow, I have people in my house that are just banging around. I have a 2-year-old and a now 4-year-old, so it's, do you kick them out and sacrifice the progression of the entire group? How do you handle conflict in that specific type of scenario where it's really going to affect the greater good of the guild, but at the same time, if you lead them in?
I think you have to get to the root of what the problem became. If one person was the instigator and you notice that this person instigates constantly, then you need to exercise that person from the group, even if it's just temporary.
Okay, but you've now sacrificed the progression or the rate
that's
of what
where
you're doing.
You got to turn into a second grade school teacher. You understand? You punish, but be like, listen, shut up. Everybody be quiet and no more talking. No one's talking. Nobody's talking right now. This is what we're going to do. And then you progress on. So long as people weren't like killing each other, and then you shut it down, and then you address that at a later date. You got to pull those two aside after.
Okay, but you've got Poison Taco in your raid group, and we can't get him to shut up on the stream, and he just continues to talk anyway. At what point do you take out your ruler stick?
When Poison Taco is directly inhibiting the progress of the 14 other people in the party.
Bad Taco.
I
told you I'm going to start fires.
I removed Poison's Taco to do that. I removed Poison Taco's ability to do that verbally. I'll mute him in Discord. And if he wants to stick around and still accomplish the goal, that's fine. If not, he can leave, and that's his choice too. And if someone was instigating Poison Taco, that person's getting muted too. It's one of those, like, everyone involved. You ain't got time. When you're in a situation, you don't have time to sit down, talk about everyone, let everyone express their side. You don't have time for that. Y'all are trying to accomplish a goal. You shut them both down, and then you pull them both aside at a later date. They're both offended. They're both mad at you. They both think they're in the right. That's their problem. They can do that, and that's fine. And maybe they are both in the right. That's the whole point of an argument. Every person thinks they're in the right. That's why they're arguing in the first place. But the point is, you don't have time for that. You've got other people waiting on you to accomplish a goal. So if you can shut them down, if you can mute them, you can let them cool off, and they can keep participating. Let that happen. But if you can't, and you got to kick them, you got to kick them. And that's everyone involved. That's every person involved. And I think as you learn and you try to as you get to know your guild members on an individual basis, which is very important. But as you get to do that, and again, that whole decision I'm talking about, that's on the event leader. I think that's much less on me or on an officer, unless me or an officer are participating in an event and I see that event leader not doing that, and I see the progress of the entire group suffering because the event leader is not addressing that, then hey, that's why I'm here. That's why officers are here. I step in, I shut that down. I let the event leader continue on what they're doing, right? But I'm not going to let two people derail 15, 20, 30, 40, 300 people's nights. That's inexcusable, you know. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to be allowed to derail everyone's night because you got an issue and you want to handle it right now.
We have
I have a cardinal rule where you can disagree with whoever's running the operation. You can argue until you're blue in the face. I don't care. You just do that before or after the operation, not during. If we're butts in the seats, and keep in mind, my primary game right now is Star Citizen. If you're in a gunner seat and you don't want to be in a gunner seat, you want to be wherever else you want, that's too damn bad because we've already taken off. We already got our assets in place. So what are you going to do?
It's all great in theory.
Well, I very much agree. I think that, and I do want to address the thing about whether you remove someone or not, because the way we do it is the group, the event leader, whatever officer is in charge of that event, they're the one that ultimately is given the decision. Do they mute the person? Do they remove them? So on and so forth. However, we do have some guidelines for that, which is basically, again, we generally, for official events, we do clear comms. So if someone's in comms, they're arguing. First of all, we don't allow people to argue in public.
Yeah, why are you doing that in the first place? How'd that happen?
With an officer,
you know?
Yeah, we don't let somebody argue with an officer in public in front of everyone else in the first place. We were like, if you want to disagree with the officer, you want to argue with them, take it up in private with them after the event. Work it out. If you can't work it out, go to the department head or the guild leader and work it out. If we have to talk with everyone at that point, fine. If there's multiple people, whatever. But don't run around on the forums and our Discord and everything talking about everything you're pissed off about with the group. Come to the officer, talk face to face, or at least virtually anyway. But when it comes to the event itself, if someone is disrupting the event, it's the officer's judgment to mute them. Well, I should say step one is tell them to shut up. Tell them to deal with it afterwards with you. If they refuse to do that, mute them, and then it's their choice whether or not they want to immediately kick them from the group or not. Generally, our advisement is mute them, immediately kick them from the group, and if necessary, suspend them from Discord until we can deal with them in a disciplinary fashion. Because we absolutely will kick you out of the group and completely out of the guild if you are disrespecting the officer and disrespecting everyone else by disrupting the group.
Now, Velik, I'm going to stand in 100% opposition to one thing, and that is because I've been in plenty of guilds, and I've experienced plenty of guilds that will not let their members argue with their officers publicly. And I am completely opposite. Completely opposite. Now, this is, I'm not talking about in the middle of a raid or anything like that. I'm talking about just day to day. We're all hanging out in Discord, and you got some drama. I'm going to sit back. I'm going to be like, ooh, buddy. And I'm going to let it fly. I eat up somebody wanting to argue with an officer. I eat it up. And I will never shut it down. Because here's the deal. The expectation I have of officers, you have got to be able to handle yourself in a situation like that. Somebody's going to come at you, and I want you to be able to do it publicly too. I want you to be able to shut someone down, or I want you to be able to talk with somebody publicly. I do not respect the whole, oh, they're an officer. Don't you dare slight them. And how dare you speak to me? Like, I got no time for that. If you got some beef with one of my officers, you better throw it. Let's bring it up. Let's handle it. We can handle it publicly.
Puka, are you gonna throw your officers to the wolves if they somehow get in over their head?
Absolutely. I will throw them to those members, and I will let you guys. You got to figure out what you can do. Let them all go. Let's just see what happens. Not again. We're not letting people like attack your person, your person, anything like that. But your decisions, the things that basically the policies and how you implement and how you carry them out on other members, absolutely, that is always up for scrutiny by the members themselves. Absolutely, it is, and I will sit there and I will listen to every little bit of it because I think it is very important for members to be allowed to judge those that govern them.
Well, I think there's a difference between being beyond any scrutiny and being beyond just being publicly called out in Discord because of a decision you made or how you allocated loot. I think
I want us
the
to
reason
all talk about it publicly. I want us to all talk about it, and I want everyone to witness that.
You can certainly
I'm
do
just
things
saying
that
that's
way.
where I disagree with you. That's all I'm saying. That's where I disagree with you, and that's the only thing I have different in what you do is I like to handle that publicly so everyone knows, so we can grow together as a guild, so we can see that and come to that resolution, and that
I can say that.
Yeah,
I can say that where we would approach that is, if one person has an issue with how something is handled, which is what we're generally talking about, one person has a problem with how loot was handled, for instance. They don't need to be going around in Discord talking to different people going, hey, did you have a problem with how loot was handled? What about you? Did you have a problem with the loot handled? I thought I was treated unfairly. We want them to have the balls and the respect to go to the leader and go, hey, I had a problem. I thought I was treated unfairly. See if they can hash it out. If they can't, then they move it up. If it's a widespread issue where the whole group feels aggrieved, then by all means, we're going to have a group meeting with that group and the officer and get together and hash it out. What we don't want is people just going off half-cocked and calling people out in the middle of Discord randomly after an event because one or two people are pissed off and felt like they were treated unfairly.
Well, and see, that's where I disagree because Discord is our common place. It's our home. It's where we come and meet together. And if you got problems, I want you to air it publicly with everyone in Discord, and I want us to work through that together. And Zaylin talking about leaving officers out for the wolves. Like, if someone brings something to them, I want them to be able to handle that. And I expect other members to stick up for them if they agree. And I also expect other members to stick up for those bringing the accusation if they agree. The point is, truth exists somewhere, and we're going to work together to find it. And that's the point. And I want everyone involved in that. That way we come to this consensus and not this is what your leadership decided. Like, no, this is what we decided.
Okay, we're beating up on officers again. This is like week 3 in a row that our poor officers are getting the boot up their butt by this group. When you guys are dealing with conflict and trying to flush it out and basically put your foot down and say this ends here, is this the best thing to do and again, this is back to the technology that we have available to us. Do you do this on a face-to-face thing? Do you do this on voice chat only? Do you do it in text? Maybe not necessarily and this could be what you do in your groups, but what is probably the most helpful way? And can it change based on the situation?
Sometimes if you have people causing issues, usually if you have someone who's being rather toxic in the community, the admins will eventually start to notice, and then as an admin, you'll see threads and threads of text. Oh, this person's complaining about it, and this other person's complaining about him. And then you have your own little meeting just kind of discussing how do we deal with this person who is just being toxic. They're picking fights with everybody. They're just arguing with them. And you might come together to deal with the problem. And I find use your time wisely. Because at the end of the day, and I tell this to all my officers too, you are here in your free time to run a gaming group. And once you've spent a certain amount of time, ask yourself, is that worth it? If you have a toxic individual who is costing you way more time than you would like, just cut them loose.
Yes.
There's no like this is your precious free time. It should be as stress-free as possible.
Right, but my question
not only that, but Taco brings up the point of being decisive, and being decisive. These people rely on you for their free time being managed correctly. So people are looking up to you in the leadership aspect. If you're not handling it decisively, you're not a decisive leader, and that is the problem with a lot of guilds.
My question to you guys, though, is what is the best method for taking care of business?
I definitely, it's voice. I mean, I don't pull people on the camera, even though we now can with Discord. So that's theoretically a thing we could try to do.
I've never
In the
tried
past,
the camera.
Blind
in the
them
past,
with your shiny dome.
in the past, we've never really tried that, but I do definitely pull people into comms. We use text messaging and DMs and stuff for dealing with immediate problems. You know, if someone's being a problem in the immediate, we will mute them, DM them, go, look, stop it. You know, if we can't pull them aside and talk to them in voice, go, look, stop whatever you're doing right now. I'm telling you, as an officer, cut the shit. If they don't, then, you know, the repercussions are going to be more severe. But we'll do whatever we have to, text or otherwise, to tell someone just cut whatever they're doing. If they're not live, tell them we need a meeting. They need to cut it out, whatever, until then. But the point is, you definitely want to get them into voice. You want to get them into a meeting with everyone that's involved, whether it's maybe not immediately pulling them in with everyone that they may have aggrieved, but at least getting them down, sitting them down, hearing their side of the story, and then talking through things and seeing what you have to tell them, whether you need to get them in the channel with the other people that they've ticked off. I do think that ultimately that does come down to also being decisive in that and telling them, look, you've violated our rules. You've upset a whole bunch of people. We're in a bit of an odd situation in my community, I think, compared to some others, where no officer in my community has the ability to remove a member. They are not allowed. It is in our core rules that you cannot be, once you're a full member, we allow people within like the first month. We could remove them, but we almost never do because we screen people. But usually they can make at least a month. But full members of the community, once they're in there, you're in there, and we cannot remove you unless you fail our activity requirements or you violate the rules, in which case you do get a trial to actually sit there and discuss things, and we will vote on it. It almost never comes to that. Like, we're a fairly drama-free community, so we don't usually have problems like that. But,
famous last words, Velic.
Oh no! It's horrible when it does get to that, because the trial process is just a pain to have to get people together and do all that crap. It's annoying. It's tedious.
You gotta pay
But
them.
we implement that again because while we have a different way of doing things, we do want everybody to be accountable. All of our officer meetings and things are recorded. They are public. People are allowed to send in things that they want the leadership to vote on or add to the community, so on and so forth. So we have somewhat of a bureaucracy about going about certain things, like removing people. I think we really don't like people to just be able to remove people like that, but we can suspend them pending dealing with issues. So, like, if someone is being an absolute prick on Discord and will not stop and will not shut up, we can suspend them pending trial and go, look, do you want to actually have a trial? Because we think you've broke these rules. Either you're leaving, or we're going to pull in witnesses and everything, and we're going to sit down and talk to you about it and vote on it.
Have you ever suspended someone in your community that stuck around after suspension and trial process?
Yeah.
Okay, I was just curious.
I will admit, most people, again, we don't have this issue very often. I think the last time we had a trial was a couple of years ago. But most people, once they get suspended, and generally if we're getting to that point, they've been doing some really blatant crap. So we can be like, you did this and this and this and this. Do you really want to sit down with this? They go, okay, no, I'm leaving. Forget it. And then okay, problem solved. You left. But I will say we have had one or two people who were just either obstinate or they're just, I am in the right. And they will sit through the process. Some of them still don't make it. But and in some cases, some people they argue a fair enough point that we give them a lesser, we don't just kick them out, but we go like, okay, well, you're going to get like demoted or something.
Like say in chat would like to say, no tail equals jail. What an amazing idea.
Years ago, before I started Part-Time Heroes, I was in this one group where at least 4 or 5 of the guys in that group, and 3 of them were admins to some capacity. They all went to law school together. So I was basically in this community run by lawyers, and the walls of text I would have to read when I was an admin in there. Like, if we had a person that was a problem or anything like that, it would just be walls and walls of text, and it's just like, oh no. I don't want to deal with this.
It's funny you say that because we recently simplified our community rules because there are so many things getting added over like the like 13 years we've existed that we went, okay, look, this is getting crazy. Let's break this down to like 6 core things. Because come on, nobody's reading this crap. For that very reason, it wasn't because it didn't start that long, but it kept adding things, and we're just like, okay, this is getting.
Oh no, they had it really simple for the regular members and anyone coming in. But once you became an admin, it would just be like this big wall of text and everything like that. That's not to say like it didn't have its drawback. I mean, there is a lot of benefits, and there's a lot of things that I learned from them that I still apply to my community to this day, and a lot of like hard rules around drama and everything like I stick to with an iron fist. But
okay, if you guys have members of your community who are hardly ever on, but they are still members of your community, in-game mail, is that acceptable? Or the simple fact that they are not on very often, would you just boot them?
They're probably going to get a certified letter notarized from me detailing their failings, expectations, and our court date. And I will, I'll let the local magistrate take care of that.
It varies for us a little bit because we do have activity requirements within like our guilds. We actually recently split this, and I won't get into the minutia of it, but we do essentially have ranks for people who have been in the community and been active in it for so long that they become elders, and we basically go like, okay, your activity requirements are basically none. There's you still have some, but they're very low because they've been in the community for like 3 to 4 years. And we're like, you're staples here. We don't want to kick you out. We want you around. You helped to build this for the last 3 years. You've earned your place here. But if somebody, is like a normal member, they have requirements they're supposed to meet. And if they don't meet them, we remove them. That's actually the quickest way that people get removed from our community is if they're not attending events, they're not showing up to raids and stuff. If they're a full member, we will send them one warning, and it's usually not an in-game warning. It is a warning either on Discord, and we'll just send them a quick message. It's like, hey, you're not meeting activity. You need to pick it up. Outside of that, they're getting booted immediately.
We lost someone.
Yeah.
He'll be missed.
Start up the trials.
All right.
So yeah, it's way easier to get removed for activity than it is for discipline in my community.
Now, I will say, again, back to your question. So you have someone who's hardly ever around but still able to cause drama.
It's a skill.
That might warrant a one-on-one conversation or definitely a Discord message about like, hey, I'm hearing some stuff. I've never was able to catch you in game to have a conversation. We need to talk. And that's where I think a DM is the most appropriate response. You got to talk about the person's future. Like, are they just going through something where maybe the problem is they're dealing with a lot of work or something, or they're dealing with IRL, and the little bit of times they can get on, they're getting on. They don't have a lot of time, and you know what? Maybe the members of your guild are victims of their venting, because they're getting on here probably for some form of escape, and then the other members of your guild might be catching some flack because of some IRL stuff that they have going on in their life, and that's most likely what that situation sounds like to me, which is sometimes that warrants a conversation, and you might have to be a little pseudo counselor as leadership and help them through dealing with some issues. You always want to be there for your members, and that takes shape in a lot of different ways.
Is it ever okay to kick people to avoid drama?
I think it depends on the extent of the perceived drama. But absolutely.
You want to be careful because if you want to kick someone to prevent drama, that might create even more drama.
I want to say it's fine to kick someone out to prevent drama. It's not okay to kick someone out to prevent having to confront them. If you as the officer, don't have the cojones to go and talk to them, you don't want to engage in some sort of conflict to actually deal with the real problem.
And you shouldn't. And so
you're kicking them out because of that. You shouldn't be an officer. And that's actually one thing I would like to hear about is from y'all is how you deal with how you would deal with identifying officers who are actually the problem, who are causing the drama. Because again, that's part of the reason why we have like the trial system and stuff, is because we've had members in the past who have come from guilds. And I know most people have been in a guild like this at one point or another, where the officers are pricks and they kick people out for the slightest thing that they don't like. And so that's part of why we have that sort of system where we're like, look, our officers will not just boot you. You are guaranteed not to, because a lot of us have experienced that, especially back in the old days of officers just basically causing drama themselves by booting people out. So how do you identify
arbitrary power usage? Exactly.
Which officers are the actual problems themselves rather than the members?
Wait, was that a question? Is how do we deal with the officers?
How do you deal with officer drama?
How do you identify when the officers are actually causing the drama and not the members themselves?
Well, I think it's pretty common when you listen. Go ahead, Poison.
When this happens, and I have one cardinal rule all the time, and I apply this even when I'm not even the leader of the group. And then my previous org, I wasn't even the leader, but I kind of chastised other officers for letting this happen. No public officer fights ever. When you're in the administration, when you're an admin, a server admin, guild officer, does not matter. The minute you start an officer fight among the other members is the minute you split the community, because then people are going to pick sides, and it's never going to get resolved, and it will get very ugly very fast. When you are the group of officers and the leader, you present yourselves as a united front. If an officer makes a decision in the moment, you back that up, and then if you have to discuss it with them and make amends after the fact, do so. But public officer fights can get very nasty very quickly.
I think it's also a strengthening exercises for officers, though, if they are at a disagreement, because these are people that you've chosen to be in leadership. They understand that they're in leadership, and they understand that they've got a responsibility to work together. So by having these disagreements, when I disagree with Puka and say that, hey, your beard is 2 feet long, he's like, no, dude, it's only 8 inches. This just strengthens our bond because we understand each other more.
We're closer.
I'm okay with officers. I'm okay with officers disagreeing with each other, but just do it in your own. Either do it privately or do it in the officer channel, in the officer forums, wherever. You can argue until you're blue in the face. I don't care.
You guys realize we're back to beating up on officers again. Just
yes. But when it comes to presenting yourselves,
my bad this
time. When it comes to presenting yourselves to the members, they need to be able to look up to you. And if you're having fights among each other in front of them, it's just gonna make everybody look bad.
Okay, but if you're 2 officers, you have a fight with each other that's very public, and you've sorted out, and the entire guild or entire community sees you work it through, is that not a really good example for the rest of the community? One that you can't necessarily orchestrate
you can't buy that
for
crap
them
anywhere.
Yeah, it's just something that has to happen and they have to see.
I think what it depends on, is I think it depends on your officers. And I think that is why it's very important that in your criteria for leadership, you find people that, 1, are not afraid to fight, but 2, know how to fight. Because there is a way to fight. Like, fighting is a skill. Arguing is a skill. And what's really important is understanding how to articulate your opinion, but also understanding how to articulate to the other person that how they feel, and express that to them. And when 2 people can do that, and 2 people, especially when officers are able to show that, and they can show that publicly, they might even gain input and insight from the members viewing that, and it allows your members to be like, holy crap, these guys are awesome, and it allows them to see that, they are at least led by people that have a strong sense of understanding, and a strong sense of how to really just articulate yourself and what you feel. And it's fine to have disagreements. We come here to play. We come here to have fun. We come here to escape. And we come here to grow and build relationships, and clashing is very normal. And we're just trying our best to facilitate that. and a lot of things involve sacrificing your wants and your desires to hear another person, and that's a very important trait in any form of leadership whatsoever, is being able to sacrifice what you want for others.
Zeb,
Am I-
you're gonna say something there.
Yeah, for me it depends on the nature of the argument. If they're simply arguing a point, again to the subject and not a person, if they're arguing at each other, personal, then you take it out of the public eye. But if it's a subject, if it's when do we raid, what time do we raid, is it better for many people? There's things in that allow you to mediate and say, listen, uh, this argument is okay to listen to in public, but there is arguments that do not. If you don't allow your people to speak, then what are you running? I don't understand. The whole nature of our enterprise is to run free of charge a organization to help people play games in a more effective way that they want to.
free of charge?
Well, except for Puka.
Thank you. Yeah, listen,
Except for Puka and his
Harvey,
beard
you're right.
care
We're
project.
we're 5 nights a month over here. Stuff ain't free.
I
Yeah.
agree, though. I really
I
think it
gotta pay.
depends on the context of the argument. And people, and that's something I expect from my officers, is to know what's appropriate in public versus what's appropriate to be taken to officer channels and dealt with privately. If somebody doesn't know basic, social skills and when to say what where, that's a separate issue in and of itself that needs to be dealt with.
All right. Are there any questions from the lovely people watching and commenting?
Before we
this
get to
group?
that, I think we should have a show where it's simply our officers come on and complain about us. That should be the show.
All right. If you
I will
guys
say I have no complaints about my officers. So.
if you have officers in your group that want to get on here, by all means, let's get them on.
You're the one that started half of it, Velik.
Yeah, well, I was asking that because no one else has any rules that prevents their officers from just abusing power and removing people. So I'm like, well, how do you prevent them from doing that?
You know
Okay,
what? Since all of our guilds are in Camelot Unchained to some capacity, we should just have an officer death match.
I like it.
All right. This is a question for the panel from Plague State. Do you differentiate PvP and PvE officers, or are they all general?
We
Depends
have
on the
separate
game.
departments.
We have separate departments too. Different people are in charge of different things.
Everybody's got a different skill set. We only appoint PvE officers who are, know what they're doing in the raids and running all the PvE content. Same thing for PvP.
I would say no. An officer is a personality type. It's a person that is able to mediate, act as a pseudo counselor of sorts, and help people come to a resolution of problems. Officers are not necessarily the same in our organization as the event leadership or people that are leading and accomplishing the structure of what would be a raid, PvP, PvE, whatever. Officers are not that. They are drama mediators.
I will say all of our officers do have a responsibility to that across the board, but they are also delineated by types of responsibility for in-game content.
I think, considering how the two MMOs we are building in, the line between our officers, rather than being PvE and PvP officers, we have some that are more combat oriented and some that are more going to be set up for like the logistical side.
Economic.
Yeah. Because let's face it, both games that we plan on playing, if you're not prepared for PvP, you're doing it wrong.
Well, you question why you're playing the game.
Yeah.
Next question by The Fall Off asks, why does Puka say chalky milk?
Who knows about chalky milk?
Oh, Lord.
What?
There's going to be a throwdown in Puka's community later.
They've seen that pepper video. That's what it is. There's a video on YouTube of me eating a Carolina Reaper.
So why don't we get Puka's Guild on?
Ask for chalky. Listen, chalky milk comes from my boss. He calls it chalky milk. I think because maybe his son called it chalky milk. I don't know. I just like to say chalky milk. Chalky milk's good. This isn't chalky milk though, but it is like an ice milk coffee, which is like chalky milk when you think about it.
Puka, there's another question for you by Gasparo112.
I don't want to answer any of Gaspar's questions.
They would like you to say oil.
See, these are traps. Every one of these is a trap.
Yeah, but there's a second for the oil request.
Hold on. If I can exercise the jaw, I think I can do it.
Let's see the Southerner break his Southern.
Here we go. Ready? 3, 2, all. I did it. Did I do it?
No. Sorry.
Oh,
it's a little eye missing in there, but
I did my best.
Treville88 asks, did Zeb donate his beard hair to give Velik a hairpiece?
Yeah, probably. Velik refused because it spoke up in his officer's chat, though.
I mean, to be honest, I'd refuse a hairpiece made out of your beard too. No offense.
My beard was lovely. All right, get the hell out of here.
I don't want it as a hairpiece.
Everybody does. It's the new thing. Hey, Puka may be the smartest of us all. He's growing his hairpiece as we speak.
No, this is for Locks for Love. You understand?
He's really just transferring the hair up here.
That's right.
Down
that's right.
There. That's all he's doing. So
yeah,
it's a hair farm.
That's kind of how baldness works. Period. It just kind of shrinks out and then comes out everywhere else.
I have a question for you guys. Do you recruit, whether it's officers or community members, based on personality types to avoid conflict? Is that in your recruiting criteria?
That's more part of our screening process than the recruiting criteria. Because if you get people that just don't jive with your group, they're not going to jive. Yeah. There's nothing you can do about it.
So you do take the personalities of your guild into effect, or your community.
Absolutely.
So I will say that definitely I look for people that do seek to solve problems, definitely more than they start them. That said, I also look for people that have a different mindset than myself, and that can bring a different perspective to something I can see, and especially people that challenge my perspective. Because and you can ask Gaspar. I mean, the guild is filled with people that challenge my perspective, and they feel very open about doing that, and they will call me out all the time, and I am very receptive to it, and I do not. I can't let pride get in the way of that, because ultimately their goal is, I was going to say improving us. That's a lie. Their goal is making fun of me. But ultimately, the goal is
if one and the other.
They want us to be better. They want us to grow and improve. And that's why it's very important to be open to that scrutiny. And that is very public. And that differs in a lot of organizations, but also to you guys, we are not a very large organization. I think that's a benefit we have. Is that when we find someone that sticks around, they're going to be tight, and it's I think that's very important. And they feel that whatever grievance they have, they can air that publicly, and we can all hash it out together.
Yeah, we do interviews for people coming into our new members coming into our community, so we do try to make sure that someone is at least not going to be a conflict for the general community personality, and how everyone gets along together. But when it comes to officers, I would say we're a little bit of a mix. I don't generally think about whether or not they have a personality that necessarily gels with like the rest of the officers per se, because I think it's good to have diversity and to have people coming in who are going to have differing perspectives. More so, I do consider personality for specific roles, because we have departments. And so, for instance, if I'm looking for somebody who's going to do our recruitment, if they are super antisocial, that's a problem. Generally, that's a problem for anybody in officership, period. But there's a difference between someone who's pretty open to talking to people, and someone who actually enjoys getting out and talking to new members and welcoming them to the community and stuff. And that's kind of what that role does. We want them to be very familiar with the new members and welcoming them and making sure that they're doing okay in the first couple of days, that they understand the rules and what's going on, what events are coming up. And they do the interviews. So we want someone who's a little bit more personable in that role. I'm not saying it's like the highest concern. Personality doesn't necessarily kick in as like the top tier concern for that, but it is something that gets considered for certain things. Whereas like PvP or PvE events, really that comes down. They still have to have an amenable personality because they have to be able to wrangle all these people together. And sometimes, that is a little bit like herding cats. But ultimately, in-game skill and knowing what they're doing and managing those groups is more important in those cases.
So actively trying to negate conflict, but yet we all approach conflict a little differently, whereas Puka throws people to the wolves and lets them fight it out for strength.
No.
Okay, you go back and rewind the stream later. You will see that.
No, it's not that.
We can make a show out of that.
It's not that. It's just that you're not going to get to hide in some hidden admin channel in Discord.
No,
that's the difference.
Get it out in the open and get it taken care of.
Yeah, we're all there. I don't consider
Jerry.
I don't consider our members the wolves. I consider them, people with perspective, and
the wolves also have perspective.
Yeah, they're hungry.
They're hungry for you, Puka.
Well, they can try. They can try. I'm quick though. I'm quick. They got to catch me.
All right. Well, that wraps up this topic. We're going to jump in real quick into the community spotlight. These community spotlights are posted on YouTube every Wednesday morning. You can check them out there. Please watch, comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Today's spotlight, we will chit-chat briefly with Velik.
Yay!
So Velik, just tell us quickly what your guild is, what community it's a part of, your role, and something rather interesting and unique about it.
Okay. I feel like I've kind of expounded a bit on it already today, yes. But for the purposes of this and everything, we are guild-wise for Camelot Unchained, Ordo Veritas. We are a member of the Legend Gaming multi-gaming community, which has existed since just prior to the launch of Age of Conan, originally existing as Hand of Set, which was a very sizable guild there, and we after that game morphed into what is now Legend Gaming. I was not there at the time of that. I actually joined a couple years prior to our stint in Star Wars: The Old Republic, and have been there since then. So like the last roughly 10 years or so. We are a mature 17 plus community. We don't allow anyone under the age of 17 to join. We use forums, Discord as our primary communication methods. It's mostly Discord these days because people just aren't that into forums anymore. But we still find them useful for organizational purposes, especially, and for processing applications and yada yada yada. But I would say our key call to fame, as it were, our focus is on building a respectful, mature community where people can have fun, but also come together to pursue challenges in the game and to pursue achievement. We are an achievement-driven community. We have had a number of different guilds in various games that have, of course, receive certain accolades and achievements that I'm not going to go through a giant list here. If you want to check those out, you can check out our website or our recruitment posts in various places. We currently only have guilds for Elder Scrolls Online and for Camelot Unchained. Our Crowfall guild is kind of in hibernation at the moment. But we also, we focus a little bit more on trying to have a community approach to in-game achievement, because when we build chapters, which is what we call our our main frontline guilds in different MMOs. When we build chapters, we want them to have a high level of achievement, but most of our members are older. They are have families, full-time jobs. Most of us do not play 60 hours a week anymore, and so we do have some members that are kind of leading the charge in different games, and they can push those hours of investment. Everyone else, though, is expected to kind of contribute, to fall in line and contribute to those different efforts as they are able to. And I think we've demonstrated over the years that people who come together, people who like playing games together, who are well organized, can achieve a great amount of stuff, even if they don't have each individually immense amount of times. And that's of time. And that is kind of a major focus for us, I guess.
Great. Well, thank you. We'll dig in more in the weeks to come. Again, Wednesday, we've got a new Community Spotlight posting. Zeb, I believe yours is up this week. So give it up for Zeb. Thank you all for tuning in. Appreciate the support. We will see you next time on the Community Town Hall with all your favorite people. And maybe we'll invite Malice back. We'll see.
Maybe.
Thank you.